Hey everybody, I'm back. This is Josh with Keep Turning. I got a bunch of requests for explaining the different states of smart objects and the pros and cons of placing them in your document. So we're gonna open up Photoshop and kind of break the whole thing down, and hopefully it'll make sense. And here we go. So if we open up Photoshop and you open it up for the first time, you're going to get this new library from document, and it's a big ugly window. Most people have probably already chose the don't show again, but if you haven't, or even if you have, you're going to want to reset this. Adobe's going to be nice enough to check mark that move smart objects to library and replace with links. Don't do this. Leave this option up to you, and don't let Adobe automatically place every piece of artwork you put into your file onto the cloud. There are going to be times you're going to want this, but overall it's going to cause you headaches if you leave it checkmarked. So uncheck mark that. Don't want it. After you do that, choose don't show again, because this window, freaking gigantic and just ugly and a pain to deal with. So close that afterwards, and then we get into the dealing with the different variations. There's three different variations of smart objects and how you place them. You can either place the smart object as on the basically it gets put onto the cloud and stored in the library. So if you paste in your smart object and you choose add to my current library, it's going to come up with this little cloud right here when it's pasted into your layers. That means that the file is not stored inside of your document, but it's stored on your Adobe account online. Benefits to that: it's accessible anywhere you go, that you can access your Adobe account online. So if you're traveling and you got your mobile art studio or your laptop, you can go in there and pull graphics off at any time or edit them. They're always there, and since they're stored online, they aren't taking up space. So those are all benefits to having a cloud-based smart object storage. The downside is if you store them that way and you're working with a group of other individuals, artists, designers, and they need to be able to access those smart objects and make changes, you either have to grant them permission in your account so they can get into it and make changes, or you have to go back and re-embed these smart objects back in so that they come up as your standard smart object. Because otherwise, when these other individuals click on that layer to try to edit it, they're going to get a warning that they don't have access to the account and it needs linked in, and it just turns into a big mess, and you're just going to be wasting time and banging your head against your desk. So for the most part, unless you have a specific reason why you would want this, avoid it for now until you get if you have a real good handle in how you're managing your Adobe Cloud account. It really is a great setup, but if you're working with other individuals, that setup's going to cause you problems. Your second option, which was the original main option of how embedded smart objects worked with Photoshop, is that you would paste it in, choose smart object. A lot of times when you paste in, it's automatically going to choose pixels. Do not do that. Just check smart objects. There's no reason to paste any vector object or pretty much any image in as just pixels, because you've now limited the editability of the image. You can't really do much with it. It's going to pixelate. You can't enlarge vector files because now they're raster files and they're just going to come apart. So just pretend like that isn't even there, because you really don't need it. Path and shape layer choices, those are specific for really specific uses of those path files that you're bringing in and how you want them to work in Photoshop. Really don't matter for this. So you want just choose smart object, and you want add to library, unchecked. You do not want that. When you do that and paste it in, you're going to get a layer on your palette that says Vector Smart Object, and you're going to have this symbol right here. Looks like a document with the center punched out in a square. Some creative graphic designer came up with the whole idea of file in a file, so gets the point across. You know what it is, and that is an embedded file. So every vector image you paste in as a smart object that's this type of embedded smart object is a fully editable file inside your document. Anybody you give that file to can then click on this, and it's going to open the file up in either Illustrator if it's a vector file, and you make your changes and save, and then it's going to update in your document. Or it's going to open another Photoshop window if it's a rastered smart object, and you make your changes. And you can have layers and everything else. It's a full functioning document, and after you make your changes and save it, it's going to update that layer in your main Photoshop document. Downside to this setup is it's contained in the file, so that file is going to grow as you keep adding smart objects. It's not going to affect the speed of your project, because all it's doing is giving you a screenshot of what that working file looks like on the layer. It's a flattened image until you click on it and it opens the self-contained document. So if you put 100 smart objects in that are made of multi-layered images, that saved file, when you quit the file and you've saved it, that file is going to be big because it's a file containing 100 files, and those size of those files is going to make that grow. But at the same time, it's all self-contained, so you can hand that file off to someone, and all those parts are inside that file, and they can edit any of it. It really is still the way to go when you're working, especially when you're working with other designers and illustrators, where you may have to hand these files off and they need to be able to quickly open them and make changes. Your third option is a linked smart object. This they don't show it on this little window that I made a big old mess on. Let's erase that. It's not listed on here, but if you paste a smart object in and you then right click on the smart object, you can choose to convert it to a linked file, and at that point it's going to ask you to choose a folder to save the file in. That file, once it's saved, you create an image folder somewhere, probably located right next to the main working file that you're working on here. It will save this image inside that folder, and if you're used to using InDesign, or if you're like the one person out there still using Quark Express, it works just like that. It's a linked file to your main document. You can then go in that folder, make changes to that file, and when you save, it's going to update it in your Photoshop document. Main reasons for this: say you're working on 10 covers, and those covers have 3 or 4 different objects in them that are in all 10 covers, but you can't just place them in InDesign because they have some gradient mask and special effects going on, and they have different effects that files have to be inside Photoshop to work. What you can do is, by creating a linked file between all 10 covers linking to that same exact file, you can then open up that file, make changes to it, save it, and when you open each of those Photoshop documents, it will automatically update that layer for every single one, instead of having to individually go to each Photoshop file, change that, click on that layer, make changes, save it, go to the next one, or copy and paste that layer 10 times into the updated layer into each document so that it's correct. So linked smart objects have specific uses, and it really depends on what you're doing if you want to go that route or not. But for the most part, you're going to want to stick with just your standard embedded smart object. The other two options both have their uses, but if you're working in a group, it's going to cause you problems. The linked smart objects, you have to make sure, just like with working with InDesign, if you transfer those files over to somebody and they need to work on them, you need to give them linked files, the image folder with the linked files as well. Because if those links are broken, you can't affect it. This just becomes a big, flat, rastered file. If they double click on it, they can't do anything with it. So at that point, it becomes useless. The same problem that you have with the cloud-based, if you give somebody a file that has all your smart objects stored on the cloud and they don't have access, it's now useless. They can't edit those files. The embedded version, they will be able to go in no matter what. You hand them the file, they double click on it, and bam, it opens up and they're ready to work. So, my opinion, for majority of people out there, this is the way for you to go. Make sure your files are embedded and that this icon is showing up in the corner when you get your smart object pasted in. If you see the other two options and you did it on accident, it's going to cause problems down the road for you. So just keep that in mind. That's basically it. So I hope that explains things. If anybody still has questions, just hit me up online, shoot me an email, or on Facebook, and I'll be glad to help you out. Talk to you guys later. Have a good one. Bye.